The Saints failed to defeat the Falcons this Sunday. Should that mark the end of Dennis Allen's tenure in New Orleans? Michael Thomas heading to IR, and apparently the Saints view themselves as the Steelers. Let's talk about that all right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Houdat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvogel, and as always, we're brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore, Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So we're here on a Wednesday morning. Obviously, it's not till tomorrow, but just in case I forget to say it by the end of the show, I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving this Thursday and enjoy it with your family, enjoy some football, and enjoy some good food. And for the Saints, this is going to be arguably the most pivotal week of the season. It's Falcons hate week for a lot of people. I think everyone should still be celebrating it, regardless of how frustrating this season may be, because, man, no one likes the Falcons, and we've got some great memories, whether it is the Shy Tuttle stiff arm or Alex Anzalone turning Julio Jones into a human helicopter. I got some fun ones, or think of the block punt, obviously, with Gleason. But before we get into that and why this game's going to be so pivotal, because I really do think this game isn't obviously just pivotal for the NFC South standings. I think it's one that should dictate how the rest of this season falls for Dennis Allen. Let's talk about Michael Thomas. So we found out on Tuesday he's going to injury reserve. He'll miss the next 4 games at a minimum. So he misses the Falcons game, the Lions game, the Panthers game, the Giants game. Obviously not ideal. You want Michael Thomas for every game in there. He's been healthy this season. It's disappointing that he gets hurt again on really what was an unfortunate situation, right? Goes to catch a pass, kind of takes a hit, and while he's taking the hit, goes to plant his foot, and it looks like he hurt his knee in that exact rep. Just sucks, man, for him, because now we have to hear this narrative about him being injury prone and him not being able to stay on the field, and it really, really does stink. And I feel for him. Now, no one has said it's a season ender, so that's good news. Maybe he comes back towards the end of December, and the Saints can use any lift they can get, especially on the offensive side of the football. As for whether or not this will kind of sink the team, I don't think it will, and nor should it. And the reason I say that is there's no reason why Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed can't be a really good wide receiver duo for the Saints. And the reason I say that is we saw that last year with Andy Dalton. So if Olave can prove from time to time he can be wide receiver 1, and we know Shaheed can give you that over-the-top playmaking ability, then there's no reason why the Saints can't continue to have success in the passing game. It falls on one man, and that one guy is obviously Derek Carr. So it's up to Derek Carr to show me that he can get on the same page with Olave, something he has not done this year. It's on Derek Carr to show me that he can see Rashid Shaheed wide open when he is consistently down the field. He didn't do that against Minnesota. So it will fall on the quarterback. But in terms of personnel, I think the Saints should have enough to continue getting the ball moving, because you got Olave, you got Shaheed, you got Taysom Hill, you got Alvin Kamara. And now we'll see. Maybe A.T. Perry gets involved in the mix. He had a couple of catches and a touchdown against the Vikings in his first real game action. So it's going to be exciting to see what he can do. This is a player that I think a lot of Saints fans were excited about when they came to New Orleans. And obviously what he did in the preseason validated that hype. So I think the personnel was there for New Orleans. Juwan Johnson's starting to get involved now. So that's obviously good for the Saints. It stinks not having Michael Thomas. It stinks even more having to hear about him being injury prone and this and that. I can't take that crap anymore. Football is football. Injuries are going to happen. It's a physical sport. But the Saints have the personnel. And I'm excited on one hand to see if Olave and Shaheed can do what they did towards the end of last year. End of last season, Olave and Shaheed were just destroying secondaries. I'd like to see that again. But they can't do that if they don't get the ball thrown in their general direction and they don't get the ball thrown in a catchable window. Derek Carr, talking to you, you got to make sure you utilize these two speed threats, because you still got them. Got to go to work with them. So before I get into Saints Falcons and why it's important and all that, and we obviously know that it is, I want to talk about Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen. Because earlier this week, and I want to make this clear, this is not an attack on the person who did this, because it actually was a very, very informative discussion, and I enjoyed it. But, Fletcher Mackles puts out, a video of him talking with Cat Terrell, talking, what else was in the video, I can't remember off the top of my head. And they're talking about Dennis Allen and whether or not, if he gets fired, if he goes under 500, Saints miss the playoffs, should he be fired? And they said they don't expect it. They just don't think there's going to be a coaching change, regardless of whether or not they make the playoffs or not this year. And after, they were talking about the Saints wanting stability. The Saints being viewed in their mind like the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that does not really fire coaches. They just don't. I mean, they moved on from Matt Canada earlier this week, and that was like their first in-season firing in about, I don't know, the last time since maybe World War II. Like, this team does not want to make in-season firings. They like stability. And I get that. To one degree, it is important to view stability as a quality that you may want. But stability, just for the sake of doing so without having the results, isn't really stability, it's stupidity. And I think for the Saints, more importantly, when I look at this team, why do you view yourself as the Steelers? Mike Tomlin couldn't go under 500 if he tried. With all the injuries, with a tough division, he just doesn't go under 500. With a bad quarterback, he always finds a way to go over 500. Now, is going over 500 the goal in the NFL? No, the goal is to win Super Bowls. The Steelers haven't done that in over a decade. I get that. I totally get that. But the Steelers do, for the most part, find ways to consistently make the playoffs. The Steelers, for the most part, make sure they're not the laughing stock of the NFL. And the Steelers, having gone under 500 since 2003. So why do we view the Saints as the Steelers when their head coach can't go under 500 if he tried, and the Saints head coach in Dennis Allen has never gone over 500 to end the season? In fact, last year at 7-10, that's his best season as a head coach. So that's strike one for me. Strike two that I have a problem with is this idea, and it was talked about in Fletcher's piece. And again, I think Fletcher did a great job. I just don't agree with the Saints' logic that they're being told. So I'm not blaming them. I'm blaming the Saints. Is this? Well, Dennis Allen's the great unknown. Derek Carr's the great unknown. Are they? I don't think there are any unknowns. I think they are known. DA, great defensive coordinator, bad head coach. Derek Carr, a solid quarterback at times, but when everything is not perfect, he's bad. And more importantly, record-wise, they're both, and I don't mean that as people, I mean that as statistical numbers, record-wise, are both losers. Derek Carr, losing record. Dennis Allen, 20-43. So there is no unknown. We know what it is. The Saints just don't want to admit that it's not working. And if you double down, you triple down on these mistakes, you're going to set the franchise back. So it shouldn't be, oh, if he misses the playoffs, let's give him one more year. No, if he misses the playoffs and he doesn't get fired, I'm going to tell you right now, I will rip the Saints every day of the week next year. If they miss the playoffs and they keep Dennis Allen, which I think is a real possibility because people are being fed this information, obviously, I will rip the Saints every day of the year 2024. If they make the playoffs and they don't fire him because of optics and all that, fine, I'm going to live with it. I'm going to live with it, but you better put up a good fight in the playoff game. You can't get steamrolled by the Cowboys. I'll live with it, even though I won't like the decision, because I don't think it's about where you are. It's the how, the why. How do you get there? Backing into the playoffs, I don't want that. Earn the playoff spot is a different story. But anyway, that's another problem that I have with the Saints. But even then, if you view yourself as the Steelers, right? Even the Steelers this week said, enough's enough, man. We got to get rid of Matt Canada. We can't do it. The Saints, on the other hand, inept offense, another inept offensive performance, but Pete Carmichael's still there. There's no changes. They tell us, we'll talk about it, but nothing gets done. And again, I know that offensive coordinator firings don't equal success all the time. It doesn't. But I saw the Bills fire Ken Dorsey, whether it was right or wrong, and then drop 32 points on a Jets defense that doesn't give up a lot of points. So sometimes you do it, you rejuvenate the locker room, you get people on the right track. But as for DA, if he doesn't make the playoffs, that's okay. The Saints are 5-5 in a year that they should be at minimum 7-3, and their 5 wins are against borderline backup quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill, who's currently a backup, Tyson Bagent, who's currently a backup, Gardner Minshew, who's only in because the starter got hurt, Mac Jones, who, let's be real, is a backup, and then Bryce Young, who's a rookie and struggling. Those are their 5 wins in terms of the quarterbacks they've faced. The Saints got the QB that their coach wanted. That was a mistake. They have a talented roster. They haven't suffered injuries until week 11, finally. When they play the Vikings, that's when they finally started to have injuries to report. After that, with Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore, I get it. But for the most part, you've been healthy this year. What's going to be the excuse if you don't make the playoffs this year? If you don't win the NFC South? And I mean win. I don't mean handed at 8-9. 9-8, 10-7, win the NFC South. What's the excuse this year? Is it going to be OC? Because you'd have the chance week 1 through 18 to fire him and you didn't do it. So I'm getting tired of the narrative, and I know you guys are probably getting tired of hearing me complain about it, and I apologize for that. But the Saints got to pull their heads out of their ass and understand that this team is going nowhere. There's no vision with DA. And get this, right? The roster is probably as talented as it's going to be today than it will be in the next 2-3 years. So if DA can't win with the talent today, why is he going to win with the talent tomorrow? Less talent tomorrow. And less talent the weeks and months and years after that. The guy is an excellent defensive coordinator. He's a terrible head coach. Because you don't want to hurt feelings, you rather sink the franchise, cool. If Mickey doesn't have the heart to do it, then the Saints got to take a real hard look in the mirror and say, all right, do we just clean house completely after this year? Because this isn't acceptable football. And I promise you, any season ticket holder, anyone watching the Saints genuinely loves this team. There's no way they're satisfied with the product right now. It's a bad product. And to bring back DA, I don't know, would not sit well with me, especially if they miss the playoffs, which apparently us fans are being told that whether you like it or not, he's coming back. And that sucks. That hurts to hear. But anyway, let's get into Saints Falcons, because this should dictate what happens with Dennis Allen. I don't mean this to be the hot take guy, to come out here and scream and yell. But if the Saints do lose to the Falcons, that should mark the end of the Dennis Allen tenure. And I'm not saying that he should get fired right after the game. I'm not saying he should be fired on that Monday. What I'm saying is, they lose this game, the Saints fall to 5-6. They'll lose the tiebreaker against the Falcons. And next up is the Lions. And the Saints have not beaten a team worth a damn this year. They have not beaten a team over 500. Why should I expect them to beat the Detroit Lions? Why? If anything, that'd be a good game for Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, and those boys to stick it to the New Orleans Saints. Not that the Saints spited them, but this is a good chance to stick it to your former employer. So this game, it means a ton. You win it, maybe you could gain some momentum, although the Saints have proven that they can't do that, but at least you give someone that hope. If you lose this against a team, by the way, in Atlanta that is reeling, 3-game losing streak, and has lost 6 of their last 8. If you can't beat the Falcons now, when's it going to happen? And it's the same thing I keep saying about the NFC South. If you can't win the NFC South when it's at its lowest, we're supposed to expect you to win it when it's at its highest. It's not going to happen. So when I look at this Falcons team, they are struggling, man. Struggling. Lost 6 out of their last 8. Putting Desmond Ridder back in at quarterback. And they are not the type of team, and I think this bodes well for the Saints, they are not the type of team that when Marshall Lattimore's out because of an injury, that they go, we're going to exploit that. I don't think they can. I don't think Desmond Ridder can. I don't think this passing attack can. And yes, the Falcons have a brilliant rushing attack. I think Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and the added element of Desmond Ridder as a runner, that's going to be the goal for the Saints. Can you stop the running backs of the Atlanta Falcons? But you don't expect them to just have this aerial assault on your secondary, even with Lattimore out. I would expect the Debo, Alontae Taylor, them to pick up the slack, and I think they can. So that bodes well for them. This is not the type of defense that should decimate the Saints offense. It just shouldn't. Now, better quarterback than Kyler Murray a couple of weeks ago. I understand that. Better quarterback than Derek Carr. His first game back from a torn ACL. He seemed to be having a decent time against that Falcons defense. There's no excuse why the Saints, with extra preparation coming off a bye, can't get something going. So what am I looking at? Obviously, as always, you're looking at the turnover battle, right? Can you force Desmond Ridder into mistakes? I think you can. Can you get some pretty big plays down the field from your offense? I think you can with Olave and Shaheed. It's going to be on quarterback, getting the job done. I expect Derek Carr to play. I know they said he's in protocol, but everyone keeps reporting that he's going to play, so I'm going to believe that he will. Got to get the ball down the field if you can. Defensively, I talked about the run game being able to stop that, but can you stop the Falcons' tight ends? The last 2 games for the Saints, Cole Kmet, 2 touchdowns, dominates the Saints. TJ Hawkinson did ungodly things to the Saints. Got to stop Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts. Is that the most lethal duo? No, but have they been a decent duo this year? Yeah, Jonnu Smith's been one of the nice surprises of the NFL this year. So that is another key for them. And I've said it before, this Falcons team is not the type that will jump out to a 14, 17-0 lead. So there's going to be leeway for the Saints. They don't necessarily have to be starting fast in this game. Obviously, you prefer it. I'd like to see the Saints start fast in the game and get off to 14-0, 10-0 lead. I don't expect it, but I don't think the Falcons are the type of team that could just put their foot down on you and make sure they could kick their opponent while they're down. And I don't see that. I haven't seen that this year. Don't expect it from them. They frankly haven't been a good team since September. So this is a good matchup for the Saints. And I think for DA, if you can't win this one with the extra prep, you're going to lose people. And the locker room has not been lost. And I don't know if it will be lost because at the end of the day, they're in an NFC South division race. But if you lose to Atlanta, that's starting Desmond Ridder, that has lost 6 out of their last 8, and you got the Lions after that, it gets tough, man. And it gets so hard to believe you can get the job done. You win this one, first off, I think you lock up the South. You'd have a 2-game lead over the rest of the division. So that 2-game lead would be paramount. And also, there would be some momentum going into that Lions game because let's be real, us Saints fans are a creature of habit. They beat the Falcons, we're going to be hyped about it. That's just the way it goes, no matter how frustrating the season's been. So, DA, you got to get the job done this week. It obviously means more when you beat the Falcons, but this year more than ever in the case that your team is 5-5, you don't want to fall under 500 again, and you want to get some momentum because you got to beat Atlanta. If you don't beat Atlanta, now Atlanta's the favorite in the division, and the pressure's on. The rest of the season, the pressure's on, and I don't know if the Saints can handle that type of pressure. Whereas if you beat Atlanta, you got some margin for error down the road. So it's going to be interesting how this goes. I think the Saints are going to win, and I don't think there's an excuse for them to lose. None at all. They were great against Desmond Ridder and the Falcons last year. Desmond Ridder did not look good against the Saints offense. Didn't look sharp, in my opinion. So I'm going to take the Saints to win this one, probably by a score around 20-17. And if they don't, boy, we're gonna have shit to discuss here. That Sunday post-game recap. But we'll cross that bridge if we get there. I expect the Saints to win, and I can't wait to see what you guys have to say. But before I get into any comments from you guys, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors this season, DraftKings Sportsbook.
In the NBA, the game can change in an instant, but no matter how the action unfolds, you know DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score 150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code BOOT. New customers can get 150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code BOOT. The crown is yours.
Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program. We greatly appreciate it. And look, man, it's Thanksgiving's coming up. People are going to try and keep themselves entertained. You're going to have football on. We're going to have some pretty cool games. Packers, Lions, Commanders, Cowboys, Niners, Seahawks. Who knows? Maybe you want to throw down a three-leg parlay. We'll see how that goes. So let's get into what you guys have to say on this Wednesday morning. I almost said Monday morning because I'm so used to recording on Monday mornings here. We're going to start off with a non-Saints question. This was placed earlier this morning from All World Truck. He said, Chris, do you think the boys and Invincible are making better products than Marvel and DC? If you're talking right now, I would say yes. I would go as far to say Invincible's been the most fun I've had watching something comic book related over the last year. Now, I had a really good time watching the new TMNT movie, and that technically is comic book related, so that was up there for me as well. But yeah, I'd probably say they're putting out a better product right now. I think that for me, it comes down to quantity and quality, and that is where Marvel is really struggling, is the quantity part is what they went for instead of the quality. I think that's going to change, though. I do think they're going to get back on their feet. I just think 2024 is going to be a reset, right? They're only going to put out one movie, and then 2025, maybe they'll bounce back. As for DC, I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive. I kind of expect him to get back on track. I think you bring in James Gunn. He knows what he's doing. You got a strong foundation when it comes to the Batman. So when you have the second one with Robert Pattinson, there's going to be a lot of people excited to see that. But you gotta really hit Superman Legacy, or else people aren't going to buy in. But as far as product right now, yeah, Invincible and the boys is definitely better. And I love Invincible. I can't wait. I'm excited for Friday's episode. Should be a little bit of a cliffhanger, they claim. So we'll see. St. Doug says Falcons hate week. Absolutely, man. I mean, this is what we live for, you know? Organized Noise says the Falcons game won't determine anything. DA's got dirt on someone, or the NFL is scripted. Sadly, he'll be our head coach again next year. Yeah, I expect him to be the head coach next year. I want to make this very clear. I don't expect him to get fired. It's just more so what I believe. I think the Saints team, there's no excuse to be 5-5 right now. There's no excuse for them not to run away with his division. And yet, this Falcons game is very much going to probably decide the division. And that's crazy to me because it shouldn't have gotten to this point. They should be 7-3 right now, maybe even 8-2, but let's just say 7-3 because they should have won the Packers game, should have won the Texans game, and you lose those two. That is frustrating as hell. And I do expect him to be back, but the fact that he'll probably be back not doing his job adequately, that bothers me a ton. Margaret says, trap game. They always play us hard. Now Ritter's the QB and a running QB. Not good for the Saints. Carr's terrible. Holds on to the ball too long. So I'll go back to your first one. I don't see it as a trap game in the sense that it's the Falcons. They're going to be ready for the Falcons. I will tell you, though, if you look down the schedule for the Saints, that Giants game in like 3 weeks from now, that is a trap game. Better coach. Maybe the Saints are feeling good. Maybe that's a trap game. I don't think a Falcons one's a trap game. I think that's one you circle on your calendars every single season if you're a Saints player. But as far as Ritter being, inserted back into the lineup, passing attack shouldn't really be anything of concern. That rushing attack, though, that you mentioned, they struggled against Tyson Bagent, really struggled against Josh Dobbs. I almost just mixed his name up. Struggled against Josh Dobbs. I can see them having issues against Ritter. If they do, advantage Falcons. Organized Noise says Pete and DA won't go with what works. I'm telling you, it's a conspiracy or they're just that dumb. No matter the situation, it's bad for the Saints. Shaking my head. I think they don't like change. I just think they're very stuck in their ways. They want to play this complimentary, vanilla style football, but it's not working. And it shouldn't work in today's NFL where we have a couple of high-flying offenses. We see teams that from point A to point B can get there in 30 seconds. Saints offense takes about 30 minutes. And it shouldn't be that way. They got playmakers. The Saints have the playmakers that other teams have or want, right? Teams can use Olave to the fullest. Teams can use Shaheed to the fullest. Would love to have guys like that. The Saints have them, and they're not using them this year. Their offense was more exciting last year. It makes no sense to me, but here we are. And that falls on DA, that falls on Pete Carmichael, and it falls on Derek Carr. Like, those are the three guys that got to take accountability. Trayvon King says, is it a Cam Jordan decision, or do we not just realize that kicking Cam inside really works? Whenever he's there, he's pretty dominant. I'd imagine that's the coaching decision more than personnel. Cam wants a Super Bowl ring more than anything. And I don't know if Cam would be that type of guy that goes, oh, you're not kicking me inside. Like, Cam's been inside a decent bit in his career. Like, this isn't something new to him. But I think that is more of a coaching thing. What is the stat for the Saints after the bye? That's a great question. See if we can figure that one out. I don't remember. I know let's see. Since 1990, the Saints have a 19-13 record in their first game after the bye. So there you go. But in that span, they're 8-9 when they're on the road. So do that as you will. But that is the record for them. Jerry says they're stuck in the Sean Payton system. That's why. I agree. I definitely feel like that they just don't want to let that era go. And it's cost them to a certain degree. Margaret says Lattimore has been okay this year, but not as good as he's been in previous years. He started off really, really well. And I wouldn't say it's dropped off where it's like, yeah, he's not playing well. It's just there was such a nice level of dominance through the first 2-3 games. And then we just haven't seen that dominance every single week. But I still think this has been a good year for Marshawn. Paul says the Saints will make Desmond Ridder look like an MVP. I mean, if they do that, then you got to start talking about another problem about DA, right? If he's not winning games and the offense stinks, but his side of the ball is also struggling, then what is he here for? Because I think the logic to keeping DA was, oh, they got the great defense under him, and that's been a staple for the Saints for the last 5-6 years. But the defense is getting worse, and I want to point that out too. DA's defense is no longer this vaunted defense that you just feel like is going to dominate opponents nonstop. I don't feel that way. I don't think opposing teams see them that way. So they got to come out there and they got to make sure that they have a good performance against Desmond Ridder. Because if you struggle against Desmond Ridder, it could be curtains for you. Margaret says Lions are going to kill the Saints. Lions are playing hard. Hutchinson will have a day with sacks because of our O-line. I agree. I don't disagree with that. And I also think that the Lions offense with Ben Johnson running the show, they'll probably find areas to exploit the Saints, whether it's with their tight end, Sam Laporta, their really good running backs in Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, got a deep threat in Jameson Williams, and then you got your do-it-all wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. They can hit you in so many ways. Court Star says, can't wait for another week of mediocrity from the Saints. We have the pieces to put this Falcons team away easily, but don't see it happening. I want to be proven wrong. respect from the UK. I agree with you. Like, I think they have or should put away the Falcons easily. I don't expect them to. Now, I still expect them to win. Expect them to win on Sunday, but I don't think that they'll put the Falcons away easily. But they should. I mean, other teams have been putting away the Falcons easily over this 8-game stretch that they've struggled in. Saints should add to that, but I don't know if they will. Margaret says you'll be able to see how the game goes in the first 20 plays. I saw it with the Vikings game. The Saints were flat. Yeah, I think that's been very apparent for them. Captain Deluxe, Dennis Allen's career coaching record will become evident during this game. Keep your eye on Blake Grupe and the lack of playing time Taysom Hill receives. If Taysom Hill receives minimal snaps against the Falcons, a team that he has absolutely owned in his career, that is it. Like that will be one of the last straws for me. Taysom Hill should get minimum 8 to 9 carries against the Falcons. Minimum 8 to 9 carries. And if he doesn't get that, the Saints are stupid. It's that simple for me. Trayvon says, man, we give DA a lot of crap and somewhat deserved, but I genuinely think it's kind of crazy. We've never at least considered what he could be if he just had a competent offensive play caller. I understand that, but we have to ask 2 questions. A, why hasn't he fired Pete Carmichael? B, would a competent play caller want to come to the Saints and be his guy? I don't know. Maybe, but it hasn't happened yet. And I find it crazy that last offseason, so many teams were hiring new OCs. The Saints didn't. And the Saints either A, didn't think that they were going to be a hot commodity in the job industry, or B, couldn't find someone to work for DA. Because I find it hard to believe they wanted to run it back with Carmichael after the way last year went. I find it hard to believe. So I agree with that comment of, oh, how would he look with a good play caller? It is a fair question. But we have to ask the question of, does anyone want to work for DA? Guys will go to certain places to work with coaches. I don't think DA is a coach that you want to go with. I just don't. Sorry, that's the way I feel about it. No Cap, No Filter Saint says, I've seen some crazy stuff in my time, but being a Dennis Allen supporter after a season and 10 weeks takes the cake. It's blasphemy at this point. Yeah, I don't see how they can just go there to this point, stoop down to this level, and the Saints front office act like everything's okay. I've said it before, the product stinks this year. The product absolutely stinks. It's a testament to you guys that podcasts like this, podcasts everywhere else, are doing well and putting up really good numbers because Saints fans are so damn loyal. Saints fans are so damn passionate, but the product stinks. And don't confuse passionate with satisfied, because none of us are satisfied with the Saints product this year. No Cap, No Filter says, no MT and Sean's going to force Pete and DA to get in their scheme bag. Falcons running back tight end and Ritter Leg's about to have a field day. Imagine if Roddy White and MT were both in their primes on Saints and Falcons and was on Twitter beefing. LOL. I mean, that would be probably Saints and Falcons fan fiction in terms of what they've brought to this rivalry. They eat it up. And that's what you want. You want guys to embrace that rivalry. And I respect Roddy White for doing so. Don't respect some of the things he said, but I respect him for embracing the rivalry. No Cap, No Filter also adds that this is why I wanted a Hunter and Yannick Ngakoue before the season. Look at our pass rush, red zone TDs, and MT on R. Insurance for MT and Turner and help Carr in the red zone. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you about the defensive end thing. Like, I agreed that they could have used someone. But the way this season has gone, I'm kind of okay that they didn't invest resources for Danielle Hunter, like a second or third round pick. Well, they didn't have a third, but a second round pick, because I think they're going to need that draft capital, because I think they need to get younger. All World Trucker says the Saints front office are dinosaurs. No Cap, No Filter says, I wonder how many fans would perceive Saunders if he was getting fun fullback snaps. I like Roach better and Shaq Davis better than A.T. Perry. Vulture Mode says, would you take Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas Jr. in the draft if they were there? I would absolutely jump at the opportunity to take Jaden Daniels. I don't know if the Saints will, because the Saints keep spewing this nonsense that Derek Carr is not a problem this year when Derek Carr has very much been a problem. And I don't know if they would double down on that horrible signing and say, we can't draft a quarterback. But Jaden Daniels would give the Saints much needed life. He'd give us something to root for. All World Trucker, Chris, do you think the Bucs are better than us? Do I think the Bucs are better than the Saints right now? No, No, I don't think they're better. I will say that I think the Bucks coaching staff is getting more out of their guys than the Saints, but the Saints, because of the talent, are still better right now than the Bucks. But the Bucks are getting the best out of their roster. Like Baker's been better than Derek Carr. Mike Evans is having a great year despite not having Tom Brady there to throw to him. The defense has had moments in the front seven where they've been okay. Guys like Rashad White have taken that next step, but I don't think they're a better team. I think they are, coaching-wise, getting a better performance out of their guys. Jay says, man, I just saw Marquette King down his own punt in the XFL. Why the F is Headley still my punter? Yeah, Headley's been one of the bottom 5 punters in the league, and oddly enough, Blake Gillikin's been a top 5 guy. Doozy says, have the Saints ever published DA's salary in terms? Something really fishy along those lines. Is hanging on to him a finance thing? I don't think it's a finance thing. I doubt he got a really lucrative contract. I think it's a stability, continuity, friendship, loyalty crap thing where they don't want to get rid of him. They believe he could be the guy. They want to hold on to this Sean Payton era. They don't want to fire coaches, but he's given them every reason to fire him, but they won't. And I don't expect them to, no matter how many times I complain. No Cap, No Filter Saint says this is the perfect time for a new head coach to come this offseason and get his QB. He can even sit behind Carr a year and we go the Titans route. Let the new guy and Hayner battle under the new head coach / offense coordinator. Atlanta and Bucks will go QB. I agree it's the perfect time. The division's at a low. Whoever gets their quarterback and coach combo can dominate this division for a good bit. Now is the time. But the Saints rather hold on to a coach who's got a 20-43 record, hold on to a quarterback who's been terrible this year, and it's going to sink them. It might not be today. It might not be Sunday. It might not be this season. It will sink the franchise if they continue to let DA be this anchor dragging them down. Jay says Steelers and Bills fire their offensive coordinators or defensive-minded head coaches. DA just doesn't know what he's doing. And Steelers and Bills are in different spots, right? Steelers and Bills are in the playoff race in the AFC where you got to earn that shit. You don't get just handed the division for being the least incompetent out of a group of idiots, which is what's going to happen to the Saints. And they fired their coordinators. No Cap, No Filter says, I meant Hunter Renfrow. Oh, I was thinking Daniil Hunter, but yeah, Hunter Renfrow, another guy linked to the Saints. Here's the problem, right? I could see him joining the Saints next year. And while he is a decent player, are the Saints just going to be the Raiders 2.0? Who the hell wants that? Paul says the Falcons' defense is formidable. It is absolutely formidable. I don't think it should be able to dominate the Saints' offense, though, personnel-wise. If it does, it'll probably be schematic-based. It'll probably be play calling and your quarterback wetting the bed, something he's done multiple times this year. But from a personnel standpoint, this Falcons defense does not move me to drastic measures. Kermit the Frog says, fuck Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael. Falcons will destroy us. They've ruined our team. If the Steelers and Bills fired their OC, it boggles my mind while we still have trash Pete Carmichael. I don't think the Falcons will destroy the Saints, but I totally understand the sentiment of being frustrated about this coaching staff. You guys know I am. I really can't take it much longer. Court Star says realistic head coach, OC, and QB combo that you go for. I mean, head coach wise, I'm looking at Ben Johnson. That would be the ideal guy, but I don't expect him to come to the Saints. I think he'll have better options. I am looking obviously at Eric Bieniemy. I like what he's done with Sam Howell. I think people are going to look at Brian Johnson of the Eagles and what he's been able to do. I think that's a fair argument. He's been pretty damn good. So I think you're looking for one of those three possibly. As for quarterback, I think you got to draft someone. I whether it is a Jaden Daniels, whether if you are, and I don't expect him to be in that race, if you mortgage the farm for a guy like a Drake May, we'll see. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to stay an extra year. I think that's what Dion kind of alluded to, so you take him off the board. But got to get a quarterback in this draft if that's the case. But I think what stinks is, and I'm not saying he could be, but the Saints drafted a guy in, I'm blanking out here. Drafting a guy in Jake Haener, and we won't get to see this year if he has any juice to him. And then they'll feel like a wasted pick, which kind of stinks. But yeah, give me like a Bieniemy or one of the Johnsons, whether it's Brian or Ben. Give me an offensive-minded coach, and let's see what happens. And then get a younger quarterback. Preferably not J.J. McCarthy. I have never been moved by him watching Michigan games, but you can get me a Jaden Daniels. Obviously, you're probably going to be out of the Drake May sweepstakes. Maybe Michael Penix. I'm worried about the knee, but like, look, if Michael Penix falls because of the knee injury and you bring him in, all right, let's see what the kid could do. I've been impressed with him this year. I don't know what to make of Bo Nix. I don't know if that's like yak heavy Oregon, just the yards after the catches all over the place. I've seen him struggle at Auburn, and I don't know to say if now he's just turned the corner. I mean, he's been impressive this year, but I don't know. I probably look at guys like Jaden and Michael Penix. Kermit says, I'd rather have Deion Sanders and Shador than what we have now. I really want EB coming here. And we'll see. I think Bieniemy is a realistic option, to be honest. If they were to fire DA, I just don't expect them to fire DA, which absolutely stinks. I might end it on this comment. Allen is a loser, all caps. I think there's no way to argue against it. He's 20-43. 20-43 as a head coach. Court Star says Bieniemy having to take a lateral coaching move was ridiculous. Yeah, so Bieniemy has to go to Washington to prove that he can call plays. DA can stink in with the Raiders, go 4-12, 4-12, 0-4, get fired. Stink the first year with the Saints. Get a second year, be underwhelming, and could get a third year. Blows my mind, man. Blows my mind. No Cap, No Filter says I'm converted to the lose now to get better possibly later. I like our chances with the new staff and QB than our chances of winning a ring this season under DA. We're all fans for the same common goal, rain to sunshine. Look, I agree with you. Some people are going to knock that. There's so many people going, if you don't want the Saints to make a run this year, what are you doing? It's not going to happen. DA can't beat teams over 500. When you're in the playoffs, all you do is face teams over 500. And they're never going to win with this DA Derek Carr combo. They're just not. They gave it a shot. I was okay with them giving it a shot. But you got to see what it's in front of you and make adjustments. Doubling down on your mistakes only makes it that much worse. But again, guys, like I said at the top, Saints-Falcons going to be a pivotal game. They lose this one, might very well lose the South. You win this one, probably going to cruise to the South, whether we like it or not, or whether we want this DA tenure to continue. That's the truth of the matter, but it's up to DA. You lose this game against the Falcons, I'm going to be here Sunday to talk about it. You win it. Let's see the fashion of how you win it, but you get yourself some leeway. You also buy yourself a year 3, which, for me stinks, but apparently I complain too much. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us on this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. We'll be back on Sunday to recap the Saints-Falcons game. I expect them to win it. We'll see if they do. Until then, guys, I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. Great food, great time with your family, great football on. Hopefully enjoy those things on Thanksgiving. And yeah, we'll be back. So stay tuned for more content here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation. As always, guys, stay tuned for more and have a great Thanksgiving.